Welcome to this explainer. We so often think of horror as something supernatural, right? Ghosts, monsters, things that go bump in the night. But honestly, the most terrifying stories, the ones that literally keep us awake staring at the ceiling, they don't involve the paranormal at all. They involve the absolute shattering of our everyday safety by completely normal-looking people who are just walking among us. Today, we're going to break down 3 true accounts that perfectly map the anatomy of this specific kind of horror. We're going to analyze those exact chilling moments when the completely mundane suddenly turns malicious.
So, I want you to ask yourself, what happens when the places you feel safest suddenly become crime scenes? Just imagine it. You lock your doors, you draw your blinds, you settle into your bed, which is supposed to be your ultimate sanctuary, right? Only to realize that the barrier between you and absolute danger, it actually never existed in the first place. Through the accounts we're about to explore, we are going to look at the psychological mechanics of what happens when your trust, your isolation, and your privacy are completely compromised.
Case 1. The campus betrayal. Okay, let's dive into this first one about an English major in a top sorority whose totally normal college romance hid a massive, calculated violation of trust. Let's map out how this whole thing unfolds. First, she's participating a ton in her English romanticism class, and the TA, a guy named Roar, starts singling her out with excessive academic praise and this really lingering eye contact. Second, around the same time, she starts dating Luke. He's a smart but kind of goofy frat brother who shares her classes and Greek life social circles. Step 3 is where the red flags start flying. She spots Luke and Roar chatting and smoking behind a lecture hall. Now, these are 2 guys who definitely shouldn't be crossing paths socially. When she asks about it, Luke just plays it off, saying he's trying to secure a good grade. But step 4? Well, that's where the floor completely falls out. One night, while Luke is sound asleep, her curiosity just gets the better of her. She checks his phone, and she discovers a massive, hidden collection of deleted photos of herself. Some were ones she had sent him privately, but chillingly, a lot of them were taken completely without her knowledge.
Think about the contrast here. She thought she had this sweet, attentive, low-maintenance guy, just a completely uncomplicated college boyfriend. But the dark reality? When she finally guessed his passcode and really dug into those deleted messages a week later, she realized he wasn't just keeping these photos for himself. No way. For the entire duration of their relationship, he was regularly sending these secret, highly suggestive photos of her to a mysterious, unsaved phone number.
Now prepare yourself, because here is the absolute gut punch. Hundreds of dollars. That mysterious unsaved number, it belonged to Roar, her TA. Once the police got involved, Luke quickly confessed that Roar had been paying him literally hundreds of dollars in exchange for these private photos of his girlfriend. And this had been going on since the very beginning of the semester. This wasn't just a bad boyfriend. Actually, scratch that. It was a completely predatory transaction. Ultimately, the university expelled Luke, Roar was fired, and jail time was absolutely on the table. But the story doesn't quite end there. Because here is the most chilling detail of all. It's been a year and a half now. She's a senior, she's living in a completely different sorority house, and yet, late at night, a mysterious silver sedan now frequently parks right outside her new home. She never sees anyone actually get in or out of it. Could it be one of them? She has no idea. The justice system punished the perpetrators, sure, but it left the victim with this severe, lingering paranoia.
Case 2. Silent intruders. Let's shift the pacing here to some high adrenaline survival, centering on a 22-year-old named Mikey. I want you to imagine this level of extreme isolation. The closest neighbor is a 10-minute drive away. Mikey lives with his parents in a snowy, forested, deeply rural part of Northern California, and his parents have just flown out of the country to Portugal. When you are that far from help, your house isn't just your home anymore, it's an island. You are entirely cut off. If something goes wrong out there, you are literally your only first responder.
So let's walk through the terrifying escalation of Mikey's second night alone. Step 1. He wakes up in the middle of the night in pitch black. His phone is on airplane mode, so it definitely wasn't a notification that woke him up. Something else did. Step 2. His eyes adjust to the dark, and he sees that his sliding closet door is wide open, a door he absolutely always makes sure is shut tight. Step 3. Pure panic sets in. He scrambles for his phone and flicks on the flashlight. And step 4. The beam hits the edge of his bed, illuminating 2 figures standing right over him. The very second the light hits them, they scatter, bounding down the hall and straight out the front door. Mikey slams his door, locks it, and dials 911.
When he finally works up the courage to turn on the overhead light, he makes a sickening discovery. Listen to this quote directly from Mikey's account. "That's when I looked down and saw what had clattered. It was one of my mom's kitchen knives." Let that sink in. These intruders weren't just standing there observing him in the dark. They were standing over a sleeping 22-year-old with a deadly weapon drawn straight from his own kitchen.
Which leaves us with a totally terrifying question. Why would standard thieves go out of their way to kill someone? The police showed up, searched the property, and pretty dismissively concluded that Mikey must have just forgotten to lock the front door since there were no signs of forced entry. But Mikey knows for a fact he locked it. And more importantly, standard robbers don't typically arm themselves with a kitchen knife and stand silently over a sleeping resident, right? That goes way beyond theft. That implies a clear intent to harm. It leaves Mikey with this haunting, totally unanswered question about who was really in his house and why.
Case 3, Relentless Stalker. We're transitioning to our final case now, and it's a real psychological slow burn about Natasha, a 23-year-old remote worker living in Columbus, Ohio.
So Natasha had just moved into her very first solo apartment, and she absolutely loved the privacy. But a few weeks in, she starts noticing this average-looking man wearing a nondescript gray hoodie hanging around her complex. At first, she tries to write it off as a coincidence. But look at this catalog of escalating sightings. First, she awkwardly passes him on her apartment stairs. Fine. But a few days later, he's just standing near the complex dumpsters. Not throwing anything away, literally just standing there. Then comes the tipping point. She spots him sitting in a navy blue sedan in the parking lot, staring directly up at her specific second-floor window. This proves to us and to her that this wasn't just some neighbor out for a walk. This was a calculated, creaking pattern of surveillance. Now, what's really interesting about this next point is how it totally breaks the geography of the stalking. Up until now, you could maybe argue he just lived in the same complex. But one evening, Natasha drives to a Chipotle about 15 minutes away in a completely different part of town. She looks up from her food, and there he is. The exact same guy in the exact same gray hoodie, sitting across the restaurant, eating and subtly watching her. The illusion of coincidence completely shatters right here. He had actively followed her miles from home. Natasha is terrified, so she calls the police the next morning when she spots his sedan again. But because he hasn't technically committed a crime yet, the cops tell her to just keep documenting it. So a week goes by. She actually starts to relax a little bit. And then she wakes up to find a handwritten note slipped under her front door. It says, "You should really close your blinds at night." Talk about absolute visceral dread. It is the ultimate definitive proof that she is being actively hunted and that her supposed sanctuary is entirely compromised. She doesn't hesitate. She breaks her lease immediately, pays the massive penalty, and moves right back in with her parents across town to escape him. But despite her desperate attempts to just vanish, a month later, driving home from a completely different gym, she spots it. A navy blue sedan parked on a random side street just 2 blocks from her parents' house. The stalker had found her again and was tracking her every single move. The lingering psychological toll. Bringing all these threads together, we realize something crucial. The true horror here isn't just the immediate physical danger. And this brilliantly illustrates that the real horror is the paranoia that permanently rewires these victims' brains long after the immediate danger ends. Look at the specific safe spaces that were compromised in these stories. The dorm room, which represents young adult independence and peer trust. The isolated family home, representing the ultimate childhood sanctuary. And the solo apartment, representing adult privacy and achievement. In every single case, the most intimate, secure, and mundane environments were totally violated. The silver sedan outside the new sorority, the fear of sleeping in the rural house, the dread of leaving the parents' home. The trauma persists, exposing the boundaries we assume protect us as incredibly, terrifyingly fragile. Which leads us to our final thought for this explainer. As you sit there watching this, feeling perfectly secure and cozy in your own space, did you remember to lock your front door tonight? Like, are you absolutely sure? And did you remember to close your blinds? Because as we've just learned today, the monsters aren't hiding under the bed. They might just be sitting in a navy blue sedan right outside your window. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack these cases, and I'll see you in the next explainer. Stay safe out there, everyone.